Hello there folks, I'm Dan Brown from sortofinteresting.com. You're joining me here on board good old Narrowboat Ark as we travel up the top end of the Llangollen Canal here in these winter months where it's looking slightly less summery than it did the last time I was up here a few months ago. My goodness me, let's just get on board, have a look at some lovely footage from the countryside around the canal and have a chat about the real nature of winter on board a boat. Right, let's get stuck in. So, my idea with this video is to give you an actual proper balanced real life, genuine life experience look at winter on a boat. So you can see, and you might have seen in previous videos recently, that there's been some absolutely beautiful mornings to wake up to and evenings here. You've got the sun just starting to creep downwards in the sky there, and it's this beautiful sort of golden light cast across the place. And there can be many beautiful moments, especially on the clear, crisp, cold days of winter where you might have a bit of snow on the ground, a bit of frost, just to make it look as stereotypically warm and cosy when you see a smoky boat chimney. And then you've also got this. I had a walk the other day just to scout out some of the places that I used to moor up on my old boat during the winter. And even though we've only had about 2 weeks of proper bad, wet, wintry weather so far, with many months potentially to come, you can see the towpath's already starting to descend into its muddy state. And last week or the week before, I hopped over the fields to go to a shop in St Martin's to get supplies like I normally do when I'm in that area. And as you can see, that same few weeks of winter weather has taken what should be a normal little stroll across to the corner of this field where those houses are, just to get over the stile and then be on the tarmac. And, well, as you can see how quickly the field descends to total mud and chaos, and you have to start either wading through it or walking around the long way. But in all seriousness, I also, in this video, don't want to make it look like it's too bad and it's terrible and it's awful all the time. As I say, many of you have probably seen some of my old videos about life on a boat at winter on my previous narrowboat in years gone by, where you've got all sorts of amazing scenes and stuff where you wake up with a bit of frost and that. And if you got some cold days in, personally, I'd prefer that to the bad, wet weather, because if the ground's frozen, then it means it's unlikely that you're going to be dragging mud in. But as soon as that ground is thawed out and turns back to mud, then it's a little bit less pleasant again to travel up and down the towpath in some areas by foot or by bicycle, definitely by bicycle. Speaking of bikes, it's something that also is potentially an issue with those frosty mornings that I was just waxing lyrical about. As many times in the past, probably at least I'd say 5 times over my life on Narrowboat Tilly, during the winter months when I'd be commuting in and out of work in the small hours of the morning before the sun had risen, so it'd be pitch black. And multiple times in the evenings and in the mornings have I fallen off my bike riding across icy roads that I didn't see coming. So obviously that's potentially another huge issue depending on how you travel and commute and what your lifestyle's like if you're based on a boat during the winter and moving around to different rural locations, especially on a canal like this, the top end of the Llangollen, where you've got a lot of very rural surroundings where you've only got little country lanes that are unlikely to get the salt and grit treatment from the councils and stuff because they're not main routes for people to travel. So there can be a lot of red herrings and issues that you might wake up and look at a beautiful morning out there with the frost and stuff like that, and then get on your bike and 10 minutes later be nursing a badly bruised knee or something like that, thinking, this weather, this isn't so good at all. But again, in all seriousness, there's so much more to winter and winter on a boat than just looking at the weather and saying, oh, this is nice, this is bad, this is making it difficult, this isn't. And well, let's get on board and I'll start talking about more of what I mean. You're joining me on board Ark at about 11 PM on a random weeknight at the moment, and I'm going to show you something or nothing through the windows on either side in just a moment, which I think serves as a good jumping off point for really talking about why some people might and some people do struggle with living on a narrowboat in the winter months. And in some cases, people who live on dry land, maybe in more rural locations, or people who just can't get out and about from their home, even if they don't live in a rural location. And it's not necessarily about a harder lifestyle, being out in the bad weather conditions and stuff. It's about this really. So if we have a look on the canal side of the boat, you can see there's nothing at all going on out there. It's just a plain old sea of blackness out there. If we have a look through here onto the towpath, completely pitch black again, no sign of humans about. And if I was to have a better camera, then I'd be able to point a good light down the towpath in that direction and light up through the front and show you that there's not a boat in sight either on anywhere that we can see. And that can fetch with it a certain element, a certain feeling of maybe isolation or loneliness. And luckily for me, it's not something that I've ever particularly been bothered by. I mean, I've always been a bit of a loner. I've always got on well with my own company, and as many of you know, with my sort of main hobbies of YouTubing, writing, and at the minute, like, almost this bad weather and the dark nights and stuff is an excuse for me to sit at the desk and build me little cardboard models to go on my model railway layout, stuff like that. And so, like I say, even though I don't particularly feel that sort of isolation or loneliness, I can look around and I can go, flipping heck, this is a bit rummy, there's nobody about, and even I can get like that little bit of fear creep in, and in the middle of the night, knowing that there's nobody about, if you suddenly hear random noises and stuff, like if there's animals scuttling around or something falls out of a tree into the canal or onto the boat, honestly, it's the moments that aren't particularly pleasant, and that's me who doesn't particularly feel that sort of isolation and loneliness sort of feeling. And I think that because it's something that enters into the realms of mental health, like this isolation and loneliness sort of feeling, it's something that it doesn't get discussed enough, because it's that sort of, I suppose people still feel that stigma attached to it, and that idea of like that you're going to be looked at as weak or something if you're out on your boat in the middle of nowhere feeling lonely. And I know for a fact that this is a big issue because other people on boats have told me. And in fact, when I was on Narrowboat Hilly, there were comments on my videos of people who'd lived on boats who literally said I just couldn't deal with the winters because it was just so lonely, so isolated, and so just alone somehow that I just couldn't cope, basically. And so it's a real thing that many people, I'm sure far more people than would have publicly stated it, would agree with and back up and have had these feelings, I'm quite sure. And it's something that I think, like I say, with people who look at boat life, especially maybe people on their own looking to move to boat life for whatever reason, you're so focused on looking at things like, oh, what's the practicalities of living in a small space and moving the boat around and things like that. And then, like I say, with the winter, making sure that you're warm and making sure that you can travel to and from the boat if you're still moving around and need to get to a place of work, for example. Those take so much focus that nobody, or very few people, probably even consider what it's actually going to be like when they're sat on board on a boat, potentially in the middle of nowhere, completely on their own, and haven't got anybody in the near vicinity to turn to. And that's certainly something that I think it's certainly something I would have thought more about. But as I say, at the very least for me, I've always been a loner. So as sad as that might sound, it's something that almost appeals to me, the calm, quiet sort of desolation of the winter canals. But yeah, so I just wanted to say that really, because it's something that definitely needs to be more considered, or considered further by more people who look at moving onto a boat. And as I say, for me, I would say I like that feeling of when you're on the boat and it's bad weather outside and you're sort of like almost the modern day sort of nomadic sort of moments, the very few moments where it's literally just you, no other humanity in sight, and just the elements rattling the windows and battering against the side of the boat. It's that coziness, that sort of almost primal, you can imagine being in a cave with your little fire and hearing the wind howling around outside. Anyway, we've gone well off on a tangent here, so let's get back on track here. Well, my friends, I'm not sure if you can hear the wind and the rain outside, but this is another one of these classic winter boat life moments. So, if I point the camera through the window now, I can see very little apart from the definition between the land and the sky. And you can probably see nothing on the camera, but you may be able to hear that. It might even be a little bit of a hail mixed in with the rain, you know. Luckily the wind is far calmer than it has been over the last sort of day and a half or so, but it's certainly not what I would describe as a pleasant night, which is why once again, oh, I've got the blind cord all over the place. Once again, if we have a look down here, the fire is our absolute saviour, and you can see there it's well, even when I was lighting it, as the first flames started to leap up, the wind outside was causing all sorts of mayhem with it. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting night on board, I think. So really, in conclusion, I suppose that all I want the takeaway from this video to be is that boat life during the winter can be easy peasy. You could moor up in a marina somewhere, you could have all the coal and supplies you need right on the marina if you're lucky, and not worry about moving the boat or anything like that, and have people around you as well. Or you can be out on the canal and absolutely love it and love the solace and the enjoyment of peace and quiet for months on end. Or you could be out on the canal huddled up in your little boat with nobody around, looking and thinking, what on earth am I doing sat out here on a boat with not a soul about? And it's one of them things that until you do it, in many cases, you just won't know how you'll actually feel about it. The practical side of things, of moving the boat and the weather and heating the boat, those you can sort out in most cases. But as I say, some of the messages and some of the comments that I had over the years when I lived on Narrowboat Hilly specifically said that it was literally no physical element of boat life that stopped people or drove people away from the lifestyle. It was literally the psychological element of potentially being a very, very lonely person out in the middle of nowhere. And that's something that I think it's very important not to underestimate. Anyway, I hope this wasn't too downbeat or sad or negative. As I say, I'm just trying to give a realistic view of what life on the canals is like in different things. Obviously, myself, I'm very lucky that I thoroughly enjoy it, and as I say, I've got an awful lot of things that can distract me and fill up my time on these long, dark evenings over the winter, so that obviously works in my benefit too. But if you took those away, I can soon see how I would start to go out of my mind and get incredibly bored on board. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Please do check out my other videos and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't already. Feel free also to add me on Facebook and Twitter and all that sort of stuff. Loads of links in the description. And of course, if you'd like to help me out, and if you would be very interested in finding out more about my life on board a boat, please consider checking out my books available for the Kindle as a paperback, and even one as a little audiobook that I recorded. You'll find links to those in the description, or visit narrowboatbooks.com to go straight to my Amazon page. But until the next time, my friends, as always, have an absolutely fantastic day, keep it interesting, keep it boat worthy, and farewell.